Hey, Steph.
Honestly, I have.
I'm so sorry. I have no idea what's going on. I wonder if I was in the wrong room. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I sent an email to Amy like, am I in the wrong place? Tell me if I'm in the wrong place.
Oh my goodness. Well, I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise.
Great. I have your bio. I have anything you want me to mention in particular, or are we
No.
good to go? Okay. Okay, great. Hold on just a second and let me. There we are. The compassionate conversion. I'm so excited to talk about this. Thanks for sharing that. Are we going to be able to share this link with the show and all that? Is this an outward facing?
Sure.
Okay.
It's
I think
attached
that'll,
to a full program, so it's a small snippet of a whole program we have called compassionateconversion.com.
okay. Okay, great. So that makes
It's
it easy to,
totally fine if they want to have that as a kind of like a script, blueprint type thing.
okay, awesome. Great. Here we go.
Awesome, so I can see
Oh
you.
my God. Hello, everyone. It's Kate Stillman with Yoga Healer and Yoga Health Coaching, and I'm excited to talk to Steph Tuss today of Life is Now. And Steph, I met through David Neagle's program. She's the CEO of Life is Now. And one of the things that came up with when you and I were talking was just about this resource that you guys have, this compassionate conversions flowchart. And I work a lot with wellness pros, yoga teachers, holistic practitioners of every sort, and even allopathic doctors and nurses who are working more in the holistic space. And often marketing and sales are, they're like the dirty four-letter words. And many times with, just because there isn't the understanding of sales as a service or how to do it in a way that actually is in service of people. And I know you guys really stand behind that. I stand behind that. And obviously, if you have something called a compassionate conversion flowchart, you're bringing a lot of compassion and empathy and connection to the table in the way that you're engaging with a prospect. So I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about, just what this is and around compassionate conversion and really why you guys believe in it.
So compassionate conversion was created out of a need to really showcase sales, the purpose of a sales conversation. A lot of think the purpose of a sales conversation is to sell something, and that's actually not what we believe. We believe the purpose of a sales conversation is to help someone get clear on what the true problem is so that they can make a decision about what their next best step is. So it's very different than approaching a conversation of how can I sell you something versus how can I help you get clear on what it is you actually need and then see if it's a fit for what we have to offer. And so David and I sat down and we created the compassionate conversion. And really it's a very simple blueprint that gives service providers, I mean, really anyone that's selling, but especially service providers, because you're in business to be of service to other people. You're very passionate about what you do. You're not looking to sell, some kind of widget, or you're not, wanting to offload a TV to someone. You're actually, selling because you want to help someone. You want to be in service to someone. And the framework is quite simple. It's helping a person get clear on what it is they truly want or what their vision is, whether it's for their health or for themselves or for their business or for whatever it is, why they want that. So what's the why underneath it to make sure that it's not from a dysfunctional place or from a place of what someone else wants them to want. Help them see what's getting in the way of them having that thing. And then what's going to happen if nothing changes. So the purpose of it is really, it's funny, it's called the compassionate conversion, but the purpose of it isn't actually to convert anything. It's to really help someone get clear so that they can make a decision.
Yeah. And when that happens, when you're asking these people these deeper questions from the intention of helping them understand their deeper answers, it's a different type of a conversation than the more of like the how-to script, right? Like where the idea is sale, right? When you're really, and there's something that happens, I noticed, because we've done this for years in how we enroll people at Yoga Healer into a program, and in this like like seeing where someone comes in, and often there's a lot of preconceived notions of what they need, right? So they'll often think they know what they need to get what they want. Do you want to speak a little bit to that and just like this whole process of dialogue that arises?
The whole process of dialogue. I think
Or the importance of dialogue, like why dialogue as a process to help create clarity?
I think it's the importance of questions. I mean, I feel like my biggest toolbox is the toolbox full of questions. It's to listen, to have the ability to listen to someone, like really pay attention without thinking about what the next question is you're going to ask, but really listen to someone, taking a second, and then really thinking about what question I could ask to help them get clear, to help them get more clear on what's going on, whether that's in terms of a general question, a specific question, or even a split question. And all of those have a place in a sales conversation. For example, let's say I'm having a conversation with, well, your audience are health practitioners primarily, correct? In one way or
Yeah, in the wellness field. Yep.
Okay, so let's say I'm having a conversation with someone who wants to build their practice. And they're saying that their practice isn't growing, which is a really general statement. So I'll think, okay, we need to get really specific as to what the problem is that's causing the practice to not grow. So I'll ask a split question. Is it that you're not having enough conversations in general, or you're not converting the conversations that you're having into clients? Because they're two totally different problems. Right. So I can't stress how important those questions are in helping someone get clear. It's not just about getting an answer. It's not just about asking a question and getting an answer. It's about getting an answer and assessing, does that really tell them what the problem is? Or do I need to ask another specific question that's going to get me even closer to what the true obstacle or problem is that they're having?
Yeah. And I mean, this process of asking questions and deep listening, right? So listening without assuming, without needing to interject, or without needing to steer.
And it's also about the importance of using tone, right? I mean, so the first question on the compassionate conversion blueprint or flowchart, whatever it is we've called it.
You guys, and we'll put this in the show notes. So
yeah, take a look at it. Is basically you want to find out what they want. But there's a very strong distinction between asking someone, what do you want? Versus, tell me, what's your vision for your practice? Like, what do you want to accomplish with your practice? They're both asking the same thing, but they're asking it in a very different way. So it's this nuance of making sure that you're asking the right questions to help the person get clear, making sure you're creating a safe environment by using tone so that they know that you're not just going through some script asking questions because you're getting answers, that you actually care about the person and want to help them. And then knowing which questions to ask, whether it's a general question, a specific question, or even a split question.
Yeah. Most of our people listening will be asking these questions to their clients or their patients or their students. And there is often, I find, just like really trying to find out, often people come in and there's a certain level of desires or what they want. And then there's the deeper level. Do you want to speak a little bit to that about how the questioning, the dynamic dialogue goes to different levels of depth?
Yeah. Well, with the question of what do you desire, the most important thing for that is for you to hit emotion at some point. So what you're looking for in asking the question is to hit emotion, because change doesn't occur without there being some kind of emotional backing. Those people who work with people on weight loss or any kind of health challenges know that it's super easy to tell someone what to do to be healthy. It's another thing to get them to actually do it. So it's really important that there's an emotional component and that's how you know that you've hit gold. That's how you know you've hit what they actually want for themselves. So you might have a question with a 65-year-old woman, let's say, who's having, and I have a holistic nutrition background, so this is fun for me to talk about this, who's having, problems with fatigue. And the first question you ask is, what do you desire? Well, I really want to be able to, keep up with my grandkids. She answers really unemotionally. And so the next question is, what specifically is it keeping you from right now? Like, what is this fatigue keeping you from experiencing? Right. And then you just keep digging until you get to that like deep emotional place of this has to change, because if it doesn't, there's deep emotional pain for me. And that's when
Yeah.
you know you've hit the place where real change is going to occur. And they're not used to being asked those questions. They're not used to sitting with someone who's willing to sit with them and ask those deep questions to get to what they really want. And then what that tells them on an energetic level is that you're willing to ask those questions to really understand them. And that's when they'll say yes to working with you.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's a level that no one else has actually touched into, right?
Yeah,
Well, and
if
it's
you're
also the
willing to
level where
do it.
someone can figure out where they can make, like, where they're inspired to make change, where they realize that they have to change. And I mean, it's like you can't do the work for someone, right? And this is a lot of the issues, I think, with, yeah, go ahead.
No, I'm just agreeing with you 100%. You can't do the work. Can't do the work for them. You can lead a horse to water, but in the end, you can't make them drink.
And in the process too, I mean, this is a two-way conversation. There's a two-way way of questioning, right? Because like I think for a lot of people who've tried to work with people who they really couldn't get results with, right? Who they really couldn't help. Like the person would pay, but they couldn't actually help the person get to the place of results because the person wasn't, yeah, I mean, actually the way that it's come up recently a lot with yoga health coaches is when they've enrolled addicts who are just looking to like be kind of part of like a scene in their coaching group, but weren't really willing to stop drinking.
Yeah, I think you need to get really clear on what your non-negotiables are as a practitioner. You know, I mean, we're always looking for a win-win, and we've worked really hard in our company to make sure that we only work with people who are coachable. Sometimes you don't know if they're coachable until they actually get into the program. But a lot of times, if you really check in with your gut, you know that there's going to be issues with someone even before you enroll them.
Yeah, do you have a story about that might be helpful, of like maybe someone who was on that fence of coachable or uncoachable?
Like a
It's
specific
probably a
example?
while ago, but yeah, you know, because I feel like that's just, it's part of this edge of realizing who we can actually help get to results and who we can't. And in the beginning, like a lot of our yoga health coaches in the beginning, like they'll just take anyone who wants to come.
Who can pay. Yeah. We've actually reconfigured our business because of that. It used to be that we would, just sign people up for a year-long program right away. Now we sign them up for a shorter program to see if they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And if they do, then we enroll them into the next step rather than enrolling them into the whole big package at once. And if they don't, then we let them go. But I mean, we have several examples of people who we really had a feeling like they'll come and they'll say, oh, I've done all this other work, but nothing's been able to help me. I did this, and this, but it just didn't work for me. And we knew that they were in blame. And we knew that if they coached with us, that the same thing would happen to us. And it happens every single time. The only time that doesn't happen is if we address it immediately and say, we notice that this is a pattern of behavior for you, that you've done all these things and now you're blaming other people for your results, when actually the purpose of our program is for you to take full responsibility for what's going on in your life. Are you willing to do that and actually have a coaching conversation around it and just kind of call it out from the beginning, rather than kind of enroll them and, pray that everything's going to work okay.
Yeah.
It won't.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So back to compassionate conversion. So the first part's desire. The second part's the obstacle of what is keeping you from doing that.
Well, the part 1B of desire is why, right? So it's why, what do you want, in broad terms? What's your desire? What's your vision? What do you want to create? What do you want to change, and why? And the why is so important. That's the, grandmother wanting to keep up with her grandchildren piece. And then it's what's in the way of you achieving that right now. Once you get to that, they'll say, that's where the split question comes in really handy. That answer to that question needs to be very specific. I'm tired all the time. Okay, well, that's an all or nothing statement. So let's break that down. Is it that you're only tired when you're with them? Is it that you have lots of more energy in the morning, but by the afternoon it wanes? And then you can start kind of zeroing in on what the possible problem might be, right? So it's almost like diagnostic, kind of.
Yeah.
Getting really clear on what specifically is what she thinks, what they think is stopping them, and what's actually taking place by asking really specific questions. And then what's going to happen if this doesn't change? So you're bringing future pain into the present so that they can see what's coming. So now they've gotten clear on what the problem is. They've gotten clear on what they really want, because a lot of people don't even know what they 100% want. They're either after a feeling or something that they think that they want. So it's helping them get clear on what they want, helping them get clear on why they want it, helping them get clear on what the actual problem is, and then helping them get clear on what the true consequences are if they don't make a change.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at that point, you're asking someone to project into the future based on the current trajectory.
Right.
And then from there, they can see, this is to me such a huge thing, because we do a lot of coaching around habit evolution and how to actually, how habit change is actually made and whatnot. And often, right, we just are so wrapped up in our day to day that we don't actually see like, hey, the momentum that my railroad is going, like, where does that actually end up? Like, where does this go in a year or two or three? One of the things that comes up often when I notice in this conversation is like, at this point in the question, like usually there's also some sort of light bulb going off for the person of like, oh, if I had made these changes earlier, I may have a different issue set right now. Is that your experience too, where they kind of get this insight of, oh, I've been making certain choices, maybe with the blinds on for a little while now, that are now adding up to this consequence of how I'm feeling today or what's going on, what my issue set is today.
Yes. And that's where you want to excite the possibility of how it could change now. Because you don't want someone to go in and begin to feel shame for the choices that they've made, or begin to feel bad about the choices that they've made or that they haven't made. The truth is the past is the past, and you can't change it one way, shape, or other. The truth is that they're there having the conversation with you in this moment in time because they're either ready to make a decision to move forward or ready to make a decision not to move forward.
Yeah.
So the idea is to keep them focusing on what it is that they want, and that's where you begin to excite the possibility of what can happen within a certain time frame by working with you, right? Like, look, I know that you're telling me that you're feeling kind of a little bit embarrassed about this or ashamed about this, or you're kind of kicking yourself. It's really not productive. Don't go to that place, or you'll stay in that place. The idea is that we get you looking toward what it is that you really want, and here's what I see. Here's what I think can happen. Here are the things that have happened for other people that we've worked with.
Yeah. Right. As people start to see the sense of their potential, I often find that even having a conversation or being in a conversation or a dialogue with someone where you can help them see their own potential and how they can take different actions, make different choices, be with a different type of a group going in a certain direction, all of a sudden they're like, oh my gosh, like I don't have to keep doing what I'm doing. I'm experiencing the same result.
Yeah, it's the best. It's like the most fun in these types of conversations because you get to be the cheerleader. Most of the people that your listeners are talking to are surrounded by people in their life that want them to stay the same.
Yeah, it's so true.
They're not for them. Right? They're not for them. They may want the person to change or get healthier because it's negatively impacting them in some way, shape, or form. But in this moment, you get to actually advocate for this person. And in some cases, they haven't had anyone ever advocate for them. It's a magical time in a conversation where you can really help someone see what their potential is.
Yeah. And even honoring, it's where we come from too, and it's similar to where you guys come from in Life Is Now. Like just in the yogic tradition, like there's in the tantric evolution of yoga that happened about 1,000 years ago. And I'm not talking about like the sexual offshoot of tantra, but just like the whole everything is awake, everything is possibility, everything is opportunity. You are completely free. to have a conversation with someone who's actually seated in that reality, right? Of like, this can go however you want. Like, how do you really want it to go? Like, we can support you in getting there. And for someone to get in touch with like, oh my gosh, I have choices, I have options. When they thought that, there's really only one way to do it. It is such a, yeah. So let's talk about that. So now they're excited. There's a sense they've already gone through urgency. They know if they don't change something, they're going to keep going where that railroad's already going. And they can change track, right? So now what?
I always go into, there's a couple different places that you can go depending on where you are in the conversation. You could go to checking in, like, how are you feeling about what we've been talking about? You can go into, all right, I need to ask, if I give you a plan, are you willing to stick with this plan? Because I'm really only interested in working with people who want to partner with me. And that means I show up for 100% of my 50% and you show up for 100% of your 50%. Right? So you're checking to make sure that they're in or they're all in. And if you get an affirmative, so it's kind of like a test close, so to speak. If you get an affirmative, then it's, here's how I think we can do this together.
Okay, so you're before they even know what it is, it's more of the, you're willing to do what it takes.
Yeah.
Yes. And how does that go? Is that just, I'm just curious, like, are people always all in, or some people, like, then they start asking more questions about what they're committing to?
So if I get an I'm not sure, that tells me that either they don't trust me all the way or they don't trust themselves.
Okay.
So that's where I'll ask a split question. So I'll say something like, I'm hearing that you're a little hesitant about committing to this. So let me ask you a question. Is it that you don't trust me, or is it that you don't trust yourself? And then usually it's, I don't trust myself because they've tried 500 different things and haven't followed through. And then we need to put a plan in place where they can gradually build trust with themselves. So you start stair stepping, right? Like, that's why we're partnering. I'm going to hold you accountable. We're going to have a conversation if you're not doing what you say you're going to do. And we need to build that trust back up. So it's acknowledging what they're feeling.
Yeah.
Calling it out and then putting a plan in place.
Yeah.
To rebuild that.
Right. Yeah, because even by them admitting it, it's like that's healing in itself, right? Even by
100%.
them coming clear.
100%.
Okay, so that's just like a little part sometimes when someone's like, and they've actually spoken up for themselves, which is huge, because I would imagine a lot of people that don't trust themselves would just be like, oh yeah, sure, I commit,
Or they'll make an excuse. Oh, I can't. It's not the right time. I'm not ready. You'll get one of 25 different objections that are not actually the true reason that they're saying no.
Yeah.
But they're all fear-based.
So are you dealing with that timing objection usually then, or is it a little later when you get more into the how you can help them?
It shows up in many, and
all
either
over.
And or.
Yeah.
Either and or, yeah.
Okay. So should we go into that part now, just because it can come up here about
Sure.
it's not the right time.
Yeah. So I'll go into the only way to, and this is where questions come in handy again, my toolbox of questions, right? The only way to see if someone's telling the truth or not is to ask more questions, right? So it's not the right time. Okay, tell me what it would look like for it to be the right time. Because you just told me all of these things, and you go back to everything that they've told you about why they need to do this now. So help me understand how this is not the right time. Or when we get to that part, I'll say, can we just have a frank conversation? What is it that you're afraid of?
Mm-hmm. So let's start with the first part of that. So, I mean, it was funny. My daughter this morning was telling me about dystopia and utopia. They have this thing in their writing assignment. And so we were talking about like utopia, right? Because there is this experience that often comes up in enrollment conversations or sales conversations, whatever you want to call them, where like the person has this idea in the future that at some point, like all the chaos will stop. And that's like a utopia type of conversation. But really what's going on is more of this like dystopia where it's like the chaos actually, I mean, this is a beautiful thing about understanding behavioral science and habit evolution is like things that are going bad get worse.
Yes. Love more life, right? Yes.
Yeah. So what happens when you're like, when you ask them like when would be how did you word it? I like that.
So I'd say, tell me what it would look like if it were the right time.
Okay. So then what do they say? Like, or what have you heard that?
So if they're using it as an excuse and it's not true, they'll start to fumble or they'll deflect. So they'll be like, well, it's not really about time, it's about, and they'll like go off
Meander.
and they'll meander in some different direction, right? Like, well, I guess it's not really about time, it's about, and they'll come up with another excuse. Maybe it's money, or maybe it's what my husband's going to think, or maybe it's,
but won't they be like, oh, well, when the kids graduate college, or like something that, or like, I mean, I often hear these things that are like really far. Oh, well, when I finish the, and this thing in a year.
So you're asking me what I would say to something like that?
Yeah. Or like, do you guys ever hear stuff like that? And like, then what do you do? Right? Because this is how people think. They think that like when these big chunks are done, then all of a sudden, it's going to be all about them.
So it really depends on what your offering is, or what you're willing to help, what you're wanting to help them with. But it really is about bringing them back to what they said that they wanted and what would happen if they didn't get it. So bringing the future into the present again. And then sometimes it's just point blank asking, if you knew it wasn't the right time, tell me what caused you to reach out and have this conversation with me.
Yeah. Why are we on the phone right now?
Why are we having this conversation? Because to me, I don't think you could be more ready based upon what you've told me. So it's not making sense in my mind why you would push this off. So tell me what's really going on. What are you afraid of?
See, the other place that I sometimes go, and my awareness goes, I'd like to hear what you think of this, is like I make decisions by where I want to be by when.
Oh, that's not how most people make decisions.
Right. But even like introducing people to that concept of like, I know that there's never going to be a good time because life is full. I'm a working mom, right? I have a company, I have a staff, I have a family. I've got my mom and dad live a mile away. Like life is full. I'm an exercise junkie. Like there's never going to be a perfect time to add in. Like right now, I want to take this Harvard Business School course on admin and finance that's offered through Boise State. And I know there's never going to be a perfect time. I know there's never a perfect time to write the next book. There's just never a perfect time. So I make decisions based on like, well, if I want to understand that admin and finance stuff for CEOs, like by 6 months from now, I better sign up now and force other less important things out of my life. So is there ever, I guess I'm curious about how you think about like introducing a new way of thinking about timing.
Yeah. So I think the problem is that you don't want to go into a whole coaching conversation about what time really is. Like there isn't any time. Time is only now. All you have is right now. Right. So instead I go into what would need to happen for you to have the time.
Okay.
Let's talk about making you a priority for once.
Yeah.
Let's talk about really focusing on you so that you can do everything that you need and know that you need to do for everyone else. Because most people that you're talking to are self-sacrificing in some way, shape, or form. So it's helping them to think about time in a different way, that they can actually manipulate the time that they have to be able to do what needs to be done. And you can help them create strategies around how that can happen.
Okay. So yeah, I'm glad we had a chat about this because often people get thrown off. My newer enrollment coaches coaches get thrown off as they're learning how to do enrollment with when someone presents the time thing. They'll often buy the story.
Oh yes.
And I almost never buy the story because I'm always like, well, if I want to know this by then, I better get on it today or yesterday.
Right. So it's really about uncovering what the real objection is. And usually it's either they don't trust themselves or there's a real money concern.
Okay. Should we go into the money part now?
Sure.
Okay. I don't have the money, Steph.
So a lot of people shy away from the money conversation because it's not really socially acceptable to have that money conversation. It's like, oh, she says she doesn't have enough money, so I'm not gonna go there. I go right into that conversation. And it's also another point where people are like, whoa, she's willing to ask the hard questions. So I know that she's going to keep me accountable. Like nothing's going to get past her. Right.
Yeah.
So I go right into, is it that you don't have enough money for this or you don't have enough money for anything?
Mm-hmm.
Because I know that if you really want this, we can work together to find the money.
Yeah, and I love that find the money. Like let's like, cause one of the ways that I had this coach explain it to me once. It's like at a certain point in the conversation, right? Like you're really on the same side of the table.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like once the offer's on the table and whatnot, and you know what it is, and there's a level of like, this is definitely gonna, the person wants it. You want them to be in, so that you can help them get what they want. And then it's like, let's like now, okay, we're on the same side of the table. Like, let's figure this out together. Like, let's partner in finding the money. Let's partner in figuring out the timing, for you to have what you want by when you want to have that by. Will you just talk a little bit more about how that pivot goes? Because once someone has decided like they're going to let you help them find the money, it changes, right?
It actually doesn't. So I like to think of like when I'm in sales conversations, I like to think of myself as like the advisor that they come to help them get what they want, right? So it's not me against them. I'm not working against them or trying to make them wrong or trying to find a mistake that they're doing. It's I'm sitting next to them saying, I know that you want to do this. I know why
Yeah.
you want to do this. I know how much this means to you. I'm going to help you figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
So do you have a credit card you can put it on? Okay, no. Do you have someone you can borrow the money from? Okay, no. Is there something that you can sell that you've been thinking about selling for a while? Okay. So, and it's just about asking those questions that nobody will ask them. Nobody asks those questions. Like, that's so taboo to have that conversation. But if you do it in a way with the right tone, they're like, oh, I could probably put half on a credit card and that gives me about 2 months. And I think I can come up with the second part of the payment. Okay, great. Problem solved.
Yeah.
But that wouldn't, I mean, there have been times where people have told me, I have no idea how I'm going to, I have no money. Like I have nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll ask questions and it'll turn out that they've got like $500,000 in a like a set aside retirement account that because of someone else's value system said that they couldn't use to further themselves.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't have even thought of borrowing money and then paying, borrowing money from myself and then paying it back. Their story to me is I have no money. If I wasn't skilled enough to ask the question, or if I was afraid of that conversation, they would have been a no and their life would have stayed the same.
Yeah. Yeah. So you don't have the money or you don't have the money for this. I'm wondering in there too, like there's one of the things that we encounter a lot is like people haven't, and it's really fascinating because in our world, like the wellness pros in general have invested, and we've polled them for about a decade now, somewhere between 30K and 100K on their wellness wisdom. Like that's how much they've personally invested.
Yeah.
Now the typical, right? Because they've gone to these trainings, they've gone to India 5 times, they've done this, they've done, and they add up all the flying around, the hotels, the training itself, the online studies, the books, the regular class, like it's exorbitant, or what might seem exorbitant. Then I ask them another question of like, would you trade it back for the cash plus interest, plus market rate interest? They would never trade it back, right? They never trade it back. And yet the typical person they're talking to is relying on health insurance to take care of their mind, body, spirit needs, and getting, subpar results for that. So there's often that question of like, you don't have the money or you don't have the money for this. What I often find is like, you're not used to investing in yourself. Like, is it that you're not used to investing in this? Like you're more used to investing in a good house, in a good car, in your children's college education, in your retirement fund, in wine, beer, and that stuff at the bar, or eating out, or Costco mega sizing crap for your garage, or whatever. Do you want to talk a little bit about like how? I mean, people spend money in really different ways. People invest money in really different ways. Yeah, go ahead.
So generally that obstacle shows up with, wow, that's really expensive, or wow, that's more than I expected, right? That's usually what you'll hear. You won't hear, well, I'm not used to spending money like this on myself. They won't admit that, but it'll come out as, ooh, that was more than I was expecting, or wow, you're expensive, or I don't know that I can afford that. A great split question to ask in that situation, or not, it's not actually a split question. It's a specific question. I always say, tell me what you're comparing this to.
Oh yeah, okay.
What are you comparing this to? Because if, let's say they're thinking about buying something for $10,000, they might be comparing it to a car, right?
Yeah.
Well, a car depreciates in value, right? It's that money is actually going toward just them being able to drive the car. It's not actually going to be making them money or improving their life in any way. Whereas helping them see how it should be justified and helping them justify that expense is so important in this part of the conversation. But you don't know how to help them justify the expense if you don't know what they're thinking. So it's really important to ask that question when someone says, wow, this is a lot more than I thought. Well, what were you comparing it to? Because those same people that will say this is a lot more than I thought will take and spend that same amount of money next week on buying a new grill or booking a vacation or purchasing something that they actually don't need, rather than spending it on their own health and wellness.
Yeah, that's true. I had this conversation with someone yesterday who it was wild. She had the money, and what we had also discovered is that she had stopped drinking 3 years before. And so we equated that she had the money. And I asked her, I'm like, would you have had this money if you hadn't stopped drinking? And she's like, no, it would have all ended up, going out with wine with the gals at the bar or buying at the liquor store. And it was such this cool thing. And so few people are there, right? Where they're realizing where they've actually done a good job, saving and investing, and that they can turn that into more growth for themselves. But then people that are used to putting money into themselves and growing, they're totally clear on it. And they're usually, it's much easier. I find they don't have these objections because they're like, I know what I want. I finally found it. So great. I'm like, let's go.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about at this point, I guess we didn't really talk about like when you're really describing the offer and answering questions about it, because there's a million details that we often aren't necessary to cover. And let's talk a little bit about like the offer in broad strokes and where that. So we talked about objections a little bit before the offer, just in the level of commitment to like, are they committing to doing what it takes to make the change and are they committed to overcoming these obstacles to have what they actually want? And we brought up that I'm just reviewing the money objections, the time objections. Let's talk about the offer.
So the offer should be results focused, not on the nuts and bolts of what it is you're offering them. A key problem that I see with a lot of solo practitioners especially is that they want to put the focus on the how-tos and not on what the end result is, but and the number of hours. So either they're charging by the hour, they're like, well, I want to work this many hours and do this, and this, and that's not what people are purchasing. People are purchasing an end result. So the focus on the offer should be on the result. You can say, I'd like to work with you for 6 months. Our focus is really that at the end of that 6 months or at the end of that 10 months, this is how you're going to be feeling and this is how your life is going to be changed. Right? If they have specific questions about what that looks like, sometimes, and even with us too, sometimes we create custom programs where we don't actually know what it's going to look like until we start working with them. And other times it's, we really want to start with meeting with you this many times a week, but the focus is on this specific result.
I'm really glad you brought that up, that you don't always know what it is. You know that you can help them get the results. You don't know necessarily how exactly what will be done to do that in terms of.
Yeah.
Back in the, it was one of my, Clay Collins, who started Lead Pages. He did a webinar before he started Lead Pages, that company, on the pre-sell formula. It was like Jeff Walker product launch formula style. This was like back in, I don't know, it was before Lead Pages. So it's a long time. It was at least a decade ago. And I watched that and the light bulbs went off of like, we can create it together. Like, I know I can serve them. I know I'm 100% in. I know I have all these like tools and skills and resources and assets and whatnot to share, but I don't know exactly what they're going to need at the time,
right?
Or what else we'll need to add in to help them get to that result. But I have very, very broad strokes. So we do this with our yoga health coaches when they learn how to coach. Learn how to coach the Body Thrive habits, and we have a workshop for them as they're getting started. If they want to pre-sell their pilot program, we do that. And often they're like, I can't do that if I haven't done that. And I'm like, well, you gotta do it to have done it. And we know in broad strokes what it is, and enroll them based on the results that you can get them based on the results that you've gotten yourself in our program and the results that you've seen other people get, and just assume you're not the exception to the rule, but you are the rule. And they freak out, right? Because they need to have. And so I'd love you to talk, just give them a little bit of advice on this.
I mean, I just think it's when you think about yourself as a buyer, right? So flip the role for a second and think about yourself for a buyer, and even think about, like, I don't know, buying a car, I guess. Like, do you really care what's going on underneath the hood? As long as it gets you from point A, you're buying a result, right? Like, and I will say this, that there are some practitioners that love to, like, create a PDF document that lists out all the different things in the program and what they can expect. And what that creates is confusion. And a confused buyer never buys, period. So you want to keep it as clear and as non-confusing and as confident as possible, so that that person stays out of confusion. Because whenever someone's faced with change, their subconscious mind is looking for ways to keep them exactly where they are. They're looking for reasons to be confused. So maybe they'll see something in your proposal that they're like, well, I don't really know if I need that. Right? Creates confusion, gives them a reason to not purchase. Oh, I really don't know how I feel about having to do this, or having, I mean, I have such extreme examples of this. There was a woman that spoke on one of our stages a long, long time ago who gave a presentation, and she went into an offer of her program, and she listed out everything that they would need to do to be a part of this. And the whole thing was like more vibrancy, less fatigue. And she went into how they need to have, like, a colon cleanse and, like, all these things that no one in their right mind would be like, yay, I'm excited to buy this, right? And she didn't sell a single thing because she focused on all the little itty bitty pieces in the program rather than on what that great result is.
Yeah.
So I think too much information is not a good thing.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Thank you for coaching them on that.
Yes.
So now let's get to the point. So we already talked about the money objections, so that now they found the money, or you found the money together, and now the question about how they'll pay for it, or actually doing the transaction, sealing the deal. Do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so there's two parts to this. One is actually getting the credit card, right? So, okay, we're all in, let's do this. What I'm gonna need from you is your credit card and billing address. What is it? And just asking them for it. If you take payment over the phone, if you take payment in person, getting the payment. That's the easy part. But the issue that continues to come up is people changing their mind, right? So they've committed to a program, and then all of a sudden 3 weeks in, they decide that it's not for them. So I always recommend that you have a conversation about what's going to cause you to stop.
Okay, we're
going to get into this program, and we're going to get moving and shaking, and then something's going to happen that's going to put doubt in your mind. And I want to talk about it right now, so that when it happens, we can zoom right past it and it doesn't derail you. In the past, where have you stopped? What has happened that's caused you to stop? And actually have a conversation, because it's going to happen. We all know it's going to happen. So actually have that conversation right on the front end before you say goodbye to them.
But after the credit card, like you've done the transaction. Okay.
After the transaction, yeah. Okay, I'm gonna enter all this. I'm gonna get you all set. There's gonna be paperwork or whatever your post procedure, post close steps are. But before I let you go, I want to really just have this conversation with you. I know, based upon how many people that I've worked with, that there's going to be a point where your subconscious mind is going to be looking for anything to keep you exactly where you are. So let's talk about what that's going to look like for you. Think about things that you tried in the past. Think about where you've stopped or what has happened to cause you to stop. And let's talk about those things right now. So that 4 weeks from now, when you call me and say that you're having second thoughts or this is really hard, we can come from a place of seeing this as a pattern, and we're not wasting time having to go back and really kind of unpack it. Let's do it right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And if this is always what derails you from getting what you actually want, then like, what a service we're providing, right?
Oh my gosh. And I'm telling you, retention rates go through the roof when you do that, when you have that conversation.
We have a video that I love the idea of including some of the conversations because we haven't, but we have a video that people watch pretty like soon right after they register, and it's on self-sabotage. And it's sort of that same vein, and I teach it from a Vedic perspective of like there's these three main patterns according to the contractions, the way consciousness contracts, whether it's heart contraction, third eye contraction, or third chakra contraction. And and people are like, oh, that's me. And then there's this, oh wow, like this is going to be challenging for me not to do what I always do in the face of growing beyond who I've been before.
Right.
Awesome. I'm so glad that we had a chance to unpack your compassionate conversion graphic. You guys, this is going to be in the show notes. Super helpful to go through this step by step with you, Steph, Tuss of lifeisnow.com. Any closing thoughts on questing? Asking people good questions.
I think the only closing thought is, once you're in the sales conversation, things can be easy. I think the thing that I see practitioners struggling with the most is actually getting into the sales conversation. So making the phone calls or reaching out or making the offer, because you've got stories in your mind that says I'm bothering someone, or they're going to think I'm salesy or whatever. But the truth is you've got to flip that, and you've got a gift. And if you're not sharing that gift and offering that gift, you're being selfish and you're not being in service to other people, which is what you're saying that you want to be. So it's really about, pushing those. You're not going to get rid of the negative voices, but actually saying, I hear you and I'm doing this anyway. And really standing in what it is that you believe in and how you help people, and being really bold and confident in having those conversations with people, knowing that every conversation that you have with someone has the potential to change somebody else's life. And that's a big responsibility.
Yeah, right. And I think often people have had, if like we look back on those conversations in our lives that really changed us and changed how we invest and changed who we then hung out with and changed how we then learned and grew. It's like, oh, we've had this experience, and then we have to be that for someone else or for a lot of someone else's.
Right. Exactly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Steph. Really fun to hang out and really great to get your step-by-step breakdown of this. We'll use it internally in our team, and we'll use it with the yoga health coaches on our show. So I'm sure, is there a way people can reach out to you, or should we just send them to lifeisnow.com?
It's actually davidneagle.com.
Oh, davidneagle.com. Okay.
Yep. David Neagle, Neagle.com. You're more than welcome to reach out to me directly. My email is Steph, super top secret, Steph@davidneagle.com, STEPH. And yeah, our website, you can poke around and see what we're up to. But if I can help in any way, please let me know.
Awesome.